Harriet Tubman was born around 822 in Dorchester County, Maryland, into the brutal and dehumanizing system of American slavery. Her birth name was Araminta Ross. She would later change it to Harriet, in honor of her mother, and take her husband's last name, Tubman. But long before she became the woman history would remember as Moses, the conductor of the Underground Railroad, she was simply a little girl born into bondage, destined to fight a battle most people wouldn't survive. From the moment Harriet could walk, she was put to work. As a child, she was rented out to other households for domestic labor. She was whipped, beaten, and once struck so hard in the head by a heavy metal weight, while intervening to protect another enslaved person, that she suffered lifelong seizures, intense headaches, and sudden bouts of narcolepsy. These injuries would remain with her for the rest of her life, but so too would something else, a burning determination. Enslaved people were not allowed to dream. They were property, bought, sold, punished, silenced. But Harriet dreamed anyway. She dreamed of something she'd never tasted: freedom. That dream became a whisper in her heart, and no matter how many times she was punished or oppressed, it would not be silenced. The escape in 1849. After years of grueling labor and witnessing the cruel destruction of families and human dignity, Harriet learned that she might be sold away, torn from her people and her land. That was the breaking point. It wasn't a loud rebellion. It wasn't grand. She simply left. At night, with the North Star as her guide and faith in her bones, she ran. She didn't know the roads. She didn't have a map. But she had something stronger, an unshakable will. Harriet made it nearly 100 miles on foot through woods, rivers, and hostile territory to Pennsylvania, a free state, and there, for the first time, she breathed the air of liberty. But her joy was not complete, because the faces she loved, her family, her friends, her people, were still enslaved. That thought haunted her. Freedom, she realized, meant nothing unless she could help others find it too. So, against all odds, she turned around. She went back. The Underground Railroad wasn't a real railroad, and it wasn't underground. It was a network of safe houses, secret routes, allies, and codes used by abolitionists and freedom fighters to help enslaved people escape to the North, and sometimes all the way to Canada. Harriet Tubman became one of its most legendary conductors. She made 19 known trips into the South, risking her life again and again, leading over 70 enslaved people to freedom, and helping countless others through instructions, planning, and support. She never lost a single passenger. Each journey was a dangerous mission. Slave catchers patrolled the roads. Posters offered bounties for her capture, at one point as high as $40, a staggering sum at the time. But Harriet knew the terrain, traveled by night, hid in swamps, and disguised herself in clever ways. As an old woman, a man, or a field hand, she carried a small pistol, not just for protection from slave catchers, but also to keep those she guided from turning back in fear, because going back could mean betrayal, capture, or death for the entire group. Harriet Tubman wasn't just guiding people. She was teaching them how to survive, how to believe, how to fight. Faith and fire. Harriet was deeply spiritual. Her faith wasn't just a comfort. It was her compass. After her head injury, she reported having vivid dreams and visions, which she believed were messages from God. She saw herself as an instrument of divine justice, not a hero, but a servant on a sacred mission. She once said, "I always told God, I'm going to hold steady on you, and you've got to see me through." And time after time, he did. She credited her survival to divine guidance. When she felt unsafe, she'd change routes. If something told her to stop, she would. These inner promptings saved her and many others from capture again and again. Her courage came not from arrogance but from absolute trust in something bigger than herself. She never took payment for her work. She didn't seek fame. She lived in poverty, often homeless, but she continued her missions without hesitation. Every journey she made was a defiance of fear, an act of love. The Civil War and beyond. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Harriet didn't sit on the sidelines. She volunteered for the Union Army as a nurse, a spy, and even a scout. She was the first woman in U.S. history to lead an armed military operation, the Combahee River Raid, which liberated over 700 enslaved people in South Carolina in one night. She risked her life behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, guiding troops, and nursing the wounded. Yet, despite her service, she was denied military pay, pension, or recognition for decades. Still, she never stopped. After the war, she turned her focus to education, care for the elderly, and women's suffrage. She opened a home for aging African Americans in Auburn, New York, using whatever resources she had. She worked alongside famous suffragists like Susan B. Anthony. Legacy. Harriet Tubman's legacy is not just in what she did, but in how she lived. A life that declared, you don't need to be born free to fight for freedom. You don't need wealth or power to lead others. You don't need permission to do what is right. She could not read or write, yet she read people better than most. She was a woman, poor and black, in a country that denied her rights, yet she changed history. Her story is one of radical courage, not in a single act, but in the relentless pursuit of what is right, over and over again. She never waited for a safer time. She never stopped to ask if the odds were fair. She simply asked, "What can I do?" And then she did it. Today, she is remembered in schools, books and monuments. The U.S. Treasury announced that Harriet Tubman will appear on the $20 bill, a powerful symbol, though long overdue, of her importance in American history. Statues, museums, and institutions around the world bear her name. But even more than that, her spirit lives on in every person who chooses to defy oppression, speak truth to power, and lift others as they climb. Why her story still matters. Harriet Tubman's story is not just a historical account. It is a mirror to our courage, to our responsibilities, to our ability to act, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. In a world still struggling with injustice, inequality, and fear, her legacy whispers to each of you. Are you willing to use your freedom to help someone else find theirs? Are you willing to stand in discomfort for something bigger than yourself? Are you willing to keep walking, even when the night is long? Harriet Tubman didn't wait for permission to lead. She didn't wait for certainty. She didn't wait for safety. She walked forward with trembling hands and a steady heart. And by doing so, she changed the lives of hundreds in her lifetime and inspired millions after. If she could do that with nothing but grit and grace, what can you do with the freedom she helped build? Harriet's inner worlding. More than just a freedom fighter, Harriet Tubman was more than the daring rescuer history paints her to be. She was also a woman shaped by pain, trauma, fierce faith, and deep emotional intelligence. From a young age, Harriet witnessed the horrors of slavery, families ripped apart, people beaten, dignity stripped. One of her earliest memories was seeing two of her sisters sold away, never to be seen again. These losses haunted her and shaped her understanding of the cruelty of slavery. Her later decisions were not fueled by anger alone, but by something far stronger, love. She once said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." What she meant was not just about physical chains, but mental ones. She knew how slavery could trap the mind into believing it was not worth saving. That's why, when she helped others escape, she didn't just show them the road. She restored their belief in themselves. Harriet's strategy, genius in action. Harriet wasn't just brave. She was brilliant. She created strategies like traveling by night, using the North Star for direction, disguising herself, sometimes as an old woman, sometimes as a man, to evade capture. Planning around seasons, knowing patrols were heavier in summer and lighter in winter, using coded songs and signals to communicate with other conductors and freedom seekers. Timing rescues around Sundays and holidays, when owners were less alert. She also learned from the natural world, hiding in swamps, sleeping in hollowed-out trees, and using the terrain as both a shield and a guide. She didn't just move people, she outwitted an entire system. Her strength wasn't just physical. Despite her epilepsy-like condition, she walked miles on foot, often with little food, in bitter cold or pouring rain. She carried a revolver, not just for protection, but to show those in her care, "We cannot turn back." There was no room for fear. Once someone joined the journey, they had to see it through, or risk betraying everyone. This shows the mental resilience Harriet possessed. She was a leader who commanded loyalty, not by fear, but by vision. People trusted her with their lives, and she never failed them. After freedom, the work didn't stop. After the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, many thought the battle was over. Not Harriet. She knew real freedom wasn't just the absence of chains. It was the presence of dignity, safety, opportunity, and rights. That's why you cared for the elderly and poor, creating the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged, fought for women's right to vote, standing on stage beside white suffragists who didn't always value her presence, but couldn't deny her truth, taught self-reliance and faith, believing that freedom meant nothing without moral responsibility. Even as she aged, she stayed rooted in service. Historical recognition took time for much of American history. Harriet Tubman's story was undertold, especially in white classrooms and history books. Her image was often softened or simplified, reduced to a kind, brave woman, rather than a military leader, revolutionary thinker, and political actor. But in recent decades, there's been a powerful resurgence in honoring her. Statues have been built in her honor in cities across the U.S. Schools, museums, and streets bear her name. Her face was proposed for the U.S. $20 bill, a powerful gesture that places a formerly enslaved black woman on a symbol of American capitalism. She's become more than a historical figure. She's a global symbol of human resilience. Her message to us today: Harriet Tubman's life wasn't just about the past. It's about right now. In a world still struggling with racism, inequality, and injustice, her courage challenges us. What are we doing with our freedom? In a time when silence can feel safe, she reminds us freedom requires bold voices. In an age of comfort and convenience, she calls us back to purposing. True change comes through sacrifice, not ease. She didn't wait for a better world to start working. She built it, one life at a time. Famous words that still echo, though she never wrote books or speeches herself. Her words, captured by those who met her, still shake hearts. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. I would fight for my liberty so long as my strength lasted. She didn't ask to be remembered, but her life insists on it. Final reflection: Harriet Tubman teaches us that heroes are not always born in comfort. Sometimes they are born in darkness, in pain, in bondage. But that is exactly where light begins. She teaches us that we don't need perfect circumstances to do powerful things. We just need a voice that won't stay quiet, a heart that won't give up, and the courage to walk into the dark, not for ourselves alone, but to bring others with us. She didn't walk to be free. She walked so others could be. And in that walk, she changed the world.